Let's go straight to the US, where House Democrats say they have received new emails from the estate of the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein that reference President Trump. This is the social media account for the Democrats on the House Oversight Committee. They say the emails from Epstein raise serious concerns about how much Donald Trump knew about his behavior. And in the last few minutes, we've had a statement from the White House in response. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says the Democrats selectively leaked emails to the liberal media to create a fake narrative to smear President Trump. Mr. Trump has consistently denied any wrongdoing in relation to Epstein. Let's go to our correspondent, Nomia Iqbal, who's following this story. Very much a developing story. Nomia, what's the latest?
Well, Anita, with the return of the House, they should be talking about the government shutdown, which we know has been the longest in history, has paralysed the country more or less. But now it's become all about Jeffrey Epstein again. So we've got these documents, which obviously we're still going through. The US House Democrats released new emails, 3 of them.
What's up, friends? Welcome back to John Podcast Today. Epstein survivors are publicly accusing Trump's Attorney General pick, Todd Blanch, of participating in a systematic cover-up, attending secret White House meetings to limit damaging document releases and protect powerful figures. A journalist lawsuit, reported by The Guardian, alleges Blanch violated transparency laws, over-redacted millions of pages, and even pulled back already released documents, directly challenging the administration's claims of openness. The legal complaint against Blanch is remarkably detailed, citing specific violations of what is called the Epstein Transparency Act, a law that specifically requires full public release of all Epstein-related documents. Fang's lawsuit says that Blanch's team systematically withheld information that was supposed to be public by law, that they over-redacted documents in ways that violated the law, and that they attempted to take back evidence that had already been made public and accessible.
To and from Jeffrey Epstein that reference President Donald Trump. And so just looking at them, one of them is between him and his associate Ghislaine Maxwell. This was in April 2011, and it reads, "I want you to realize that the dog that hasn't barked is Trump." And then the name of who the Democrats say was a victim, spent hours at my house with him. Then there are other emails between Epstein and Michael Wolff. He is an author who's written quite a few books about President Trump, and it is in response to a question about Donald Trump. Let me quote you what Wolff has said in that email. "If he says he hasn't been on the plane or to the House, then that gives you a valuable PR and political currency." Now, the Democrats are saying this proves that President Trump had ties with Jeffrey Epstein and that he hasn't been open and honest about that. The White House, as you read there, that statement from Caroline Leavitt, she has said that this is a fake narrative. You've got Republicans who've now...
This is not a political attack from partisan opponents. It is a formal legal claim backed by a journalist who specializes in these issues, alleging that a senior Justice Department official violated federal law to suppress evidence. That is obstruction, that is destruction of evidence, and that is being done by the guy Trump wants to be the chief law enforcement officer in America. The survivors themselves have been watching this process unfold with growing anger and despair because they have been trying for years to get full transparency on the Epstein files, to learn the complete truth about who was involved in the trafficking network, to identify the powerful people who knew what was happening and did nothing, and to finally achieve some measure of justice for what was done to them. And what they have seen from Blanche and the Trump Justice Department is not a commitment to justice or truth, but a systematic effort to suppress evidence, to protect powerful figures, and to bury the truth as deep as possible.
Dumped documents as well, saying to try and counter what they say is a cherry picking of the narrative by Democrats. Worth reminding that Donald Trump has consistently denied any wrongdoing in relation to Jeffrey Epstein. 2 of them used to be friends. He said they fell out in the early 2000s. But I think what this proves is, once again, the whole Epstein saga is a story that just won't go away. It's a story that the White House can't really kill. And so much of that is because President Trump himself when he was campaigning as president, had suggested there was much more to Jeffrey Epstein killing himself. Many people in MAGA world do not believe that is true. They believe that there is something else that happened to Epstein, that there's some sort of cover-up going on. And Mr. Trump, in part, presented his presidential candidacy to voters as, I'm the guy that will expose the truth, that will expose powerful people doing bad things. And a lot of his supporters are very angry at what appears to now be this U-turn by...
When Trump announced that Blanche would be the permanent attorney general, the survivors did something remarkable. They organized, they came together, and they made a public statement opposing his nomination. CNN has reported extensively on this organized opposition, and the survivors' statement is devastating in its directness. They say that Blanche was part of clandestine meetings at the White House, secret meetings where government officials discussed how to manage and contain the political damage from the Epstein files. They say it is unacceptable to elevate someone who was part of a political damage control operation to be the nation's chief law enforcement officer. And that argument cuts right to the heart of what a justice system is supposed to be, because an attorney general is supposed to be committed to justice, to truth.
President Trump. But as I say, we are still going through those documents at the moment. But just to repeat, the White House has said that the release of these email exchanges creates, in their words, a fake narrative, and Donald Trump has consistently denied any wrongdoing in relation to Jeffrey Epstein.
Okay, Nomia, for the moment, thank you very much. Nomia Iqbal there in Washington for us. As Nomia said, the Republicans on the House Oversight Committee dropping a tranche of 20,000 pages of documents to counter their view that the Democrats are trying to cherry pick some pages of the documents. And of course, our teams going through all of those papers. It may take some time, but going through those papers, we will keep you updated on that story.
To following the law, not to managing political damage for the White House. But that is exactly what the survivors say Blanche did, and they have the evidence to back up their claims. The meetings that Blanche allegedly attended were not routine administrative sessions about document release procedures. They were secret White House strategy sessions where government officials discussed how to handle the political fallout from the Epstein files being released to the public. According to survivor accounts and reporting from multiple major outlets, these meetings involved discussions about how to minimize damage to Trump and other powerful figures, how to control the narrative around Epstein's connections to the White House, and how to ensure that the most damaging documents were never fully released to the public. Blanche was at the center of these meetings, coordinating with Trump's team about how to handle the documents, the fallout, and the public reaction. The over-redaction of documents is one of the most concrete examples of this cover-up operation because millions of pages of Epstein-related files were systematically blacked out and withheld from public view. The lawsuit from Katie Fang documents this in detail, alleging that Blanche's team improperly over-redacted documents, blacking out information that should have been publicly accessible and withholding entire sections that were supposed to be released under the law. This is not a matter of interpretation or political disagreement. It is a formal legal claim that Blanche and his team violated the law by withholding information that was mandated to be public. The Guardian's reporting on this lawsuit has brought these allegations to a wider audience, and the specifics are damning in their detail. The timing of all this is particularly significant because Trump needs Senate confirmation to make Blanche the permanent attorney general, and that means there will be Senate hearings with public testimony and questioning. The survivors are going to stand up in front of the cameras and the world and talk directly about what they say Blanche did, why they believe he helped cover up their cases and their abuse, and why he should not be allowed to become the chief law enforcement officer of the United States. This is going to be absolutely devastating for Blanche politically, because these are not Democratic politicians attacking him in a partisan way. These are women who survived brutal abuse, saying that this man helped cover it up and chose politics over justice. The moral authority of the survivors is something that Trump cannot easily dismiss or attack, because these are not political operatives throwing punches at the other side. They are victims of one of the most horrific sex trafficking operations in American history. And they are saying that the man Trump wants to be attorney general helped bury the evidence of their abuse. Trump can spin narratives. He can call things hoaxes and lies. He can attack his critics aggressively, but he cannot easily dismiss Epstein survivors who are saying that his Attorney General pick helped cover up their abuse and bury their justice. That is too powerful, too true to the survivors' experience, and too compelling for any politician to simply ignore. The deeper significance of this moment goes far beyond one confirmation fight because it is about what the Justice Department is going to be and who it is going to serve. If Blanche becomes Attorney General, it will send a message that the Justice Department is not an institution pursuing justice, but a tool for protecting the powerful and protecting Trump. It will tell abuse survivors everywhere that the system is rigged against them, that powerful people can bury evidence and avoid consequences, and that the government is more interested in protecting the powerful than in pursuing justice. That is why the survivors are fighting so hard, because they understand that this confirmation is about something much bigger than one job opening. It is about the fundamental integrity of the American justice system. The connections between Trump and Epstein are a shadow that has hung over the administration from the very beginning, and the survivors are making it clear that Blanche's efforts to suppress the Epstein files are part of a larger pattern of protecting Trump from scrutiny. The Epstein files contain references to Trump, documents about his relationship with Epstein, about his trips to Epstein's properties, and about the entire social network of wealthy and powerful men connected to Epstein and his criminal operation. According to survivors and detailed reporting from Politico and CNN, Blanche has been actively trying to minimize those connections and suppress attention to them, pushing back aggressively when evidence about Trump and Epstein has come up in the files. When documents mentioning Trump appeared in the Epstein files, Blanche pushed back and said the photos and references aren't enough to prosecute anyone connected to Trump. He said the allegations about Trump are not credible. He said he doesn't appreciate attention being directed toward Trump. This is not the language of someone trying to get to the truth. It is the language of someone protecting someone, the language of a cover-up operation, the language of someone whose actual job is to make sure Trump doesn't face scrutiny for his Epstein connections. What this really looks like is Trump picking someone to be Attorney General who's already shown he's willing to help manage, contain, and bury evidence that implicates Trump himself. And that is the actual scandal at the heart of this nomination. The structural position that Blanche currently holds is crucial to understanding how this cover-up has been able to proceed. As Deputy Attorney General, he has been running the Justice Department on a day-to-day basis, overseeing the release of the Epstein files and making the decisions about what documents to release, what to redact, and what to withhold. This is not a hypothetical or abstract position. It is real power over real evidence. And according to multiple sources, Blanche has been using that power to systematically suppress information that the courts ordered to be released and that Congress demanded to see. The millions of pages of documents that survivors desperately needed for their cases have been held back, redacted, and minimized, all under Blanche's supervision. The lawsuit from Katie Fang is particularly important because it brings formal legal standing to the allegations that Blanche and the Trump Justice Department have been systematically violating transparency laws. This is not just survivors making noise on the internet or journalists writing opinion pieces. It is a formal legal complaint with real legal standing accusing a senior government official of violating federal law. The Guardian's extensive reporting on this lawsuit has documented the specific allegations in detail, showing that Fang's legal team has built a case that goes far beyond political accusations and into the realm of concrete legal violations that could have real consequences for Blanche and the Justice Department. The pattern of behavior that the survivors and Fang have documented is remarkably consistent and damning. Blanche and his team missed statutory deadlines for releasing documents. They over-redacted millions of pages. They withheld information that was supposed to be public by law, and they pulled documents back after releasing them. Each of these actions individually is a violation of transparency laws and court orders, and taken together, they constitute a systematic effort to suppress evidence and protect powerful figures from scrutiny. The specificity of the allegations makes them difficult to dismiss as political attacks because they are documented with dates, times, and specific examples of misconduct that can be verified by independent observers. The role of the survivors in all of this cannot be overstated because their willingness to come forward and speak publicly about what they have experienced is the single most powerful element of the opposition to Blanche. These are women who have already been through the trauma of abuse, exploitation, and trafficking, and they they are now putting themselves through the additional trauma of public testimony and media scrutiny because they believe that justice matters more than their own comfort or safety. Their courage in the face of this situation is breathtaking, and it is the reason why their moral authority is so powerful and so difficult for Trump and his allies to counter. The Senate confirmation process is going to be a crucible for Blanch and for every senator who has to vote on his nomination, because the hearings will bring the survivors' testimony directly into the public record in the most dramatic possible way. Senators will have to look the survivors in the eye and hear their stories, journalists will report every word, and the American people will be watching to see whether their elected representatives are willing to stand up for justice or whether they will be complicit in the cover-up. The political pressure on Republican senators will be intense, especially those in swing districts or competitive states where independent voters and suburban women could make the difference between winning and losing. The electoral implications of Blanche's nomination are significant and cannot be ignored because voting to confirm someone that Epstein survivors are publicly saying helped bury justice is not a good look for any politician. Attack ads could run showing survivors saying Blanche helped cover up their abuse. Ads could show the lawsuit about document withholding and over-redaction. Ads could say that a senator voted to put a cover-up artist in charge of the Justice Department. This is not the kind of political position that any senator wants to be in, especially not in a year when the margins are thin and every vote matters. The survivors have made it clear that they will not be silent, and their voices will be heard in the campaign ads and political debates that are already beginning to heat up. The broader narrative that this nomination feeds into is about Trump's fundamental approach to the Justice Department and the rule of law. Throughout his time in office, Trump has shown a consistent pattern of wanting to use the DOJ to protect his friends and to punish his enemies, purging career staff, ordering politically motivated investigations, interfering with cases, and pressuring prosecutors. Now he is picking someone for Attorney General who, according to survivors and journalists, is willing to help him cover up evidence that implicates Trump himself. This is the ultimate expression of DOJ weaponization, using law enforcement not to pursue justice, but to protect yourself and the people connected to you. The more people understand that this is what Trump is trying to do, the more they are going to be concerned about the integrity of the entire justice system. Suburban women especially care about this stuff. They care about whether the justice system is fair, whether powerful people face consequences, whether their government is actually pursuing justice or just protecting rich and powerful men. When Trump picks someone that survivors say helped cover up Epstein, it plays directly into doubts about whether Trump respects law and order and justice, or whether he just cares about protecting his circle. This is a powerful political vulnerability that the survivors are exploiting with remarkable effectiveness. The survivors have also pointed to Blanche's public statements about the Epstein investigation as further evidence of the cover-up. Blanche has said that the federal review of the Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell sex trafficking case is over, that the investigation is complete and done, that they finished looking into everything and declared it closed. But according to survivors and Democratic lawmakers who have looked at the actual files, millions of pages of documents remain hidden and redacted, key client names have never faced real scrutiny or investigation, and key participants have never been charged or investigated. So, when Blanche says the review is over, what he is really saying is that they are done looking. They are not investigating anymore. They have protected who they need to protect, and they are burying what they need to bury. The investigation is closed, and they are moving on. And that is what the cover-up looks like in practice. The Trump administration has decided that the Epstein files are too politically damaging to fully release, that the connections to powerful figures are too dangerous to expose, and that the truth is too inconvenient to allow to come out. So they have systematically suppressed the evidence, hidden the documents, and declared the investigation over, hoping that the public will eventually move on and forget about the whole thing. But the survivors have not forgotten, and they are not going to let anyone forget because they lived through the abuse and they know what justice looks like. And this is not it. The implications of Blanche's confirmation extend far beyond the Epstein case, because if he is confirmed as Attorney General, he would be in charge of all federal prosecutions, setting the priorities for the Justice Department and determining what gets investigated and what does not. If survivors and journalists are right that he is willing to cover up evidence related to Epstein and Trump, then what else will he cover up? What other crimes will he protect? What other powerful people will he shield from justice? This is not just about one case or one person. It is about the fundamental integrity of the American justice system and whether it can be trusted to pursue justice without fear or favor, even when the powerful are involved. The political and moral stakes of this confirmation fight are extraordinary because the survivors are making an argument that cannot be dismissed or trivialized. They are saying that Todd Blanche should not be Attorney General because he helped bury their justice, and that argument cuts through all the normal partisan noise and political spin. When a survivor testifies before the Senate and says that this man was supposed to pursue justice for me, but instead helped hide evidence and protect the powerful people who hurt me, that is the kind of testimony that makes swing voters and independent voters pay attention. That is the kind of testimony that makes suburban women look at Trump and ask whether he really thinks this is the person who should be running law enforcement. The survivors have been remarkably disciplined and strategic in their opposition to Blanche, organizing themselves and making their case in ways that maximize their moral authority and political impact. They have given interviews to major media outlets. They have made public statements through their advocates and attorneys, and they are preparing to testify before the Senate in the most dramatic possible way. Their message is consistent and powerful. Todd Blanche helped cover up our abuse, he helped protect our abusers, and he should not be allowed to become the chief law enforcement officer of the United States. This message resonates with anyone who cares about justice, regardless of their political affiliation or ideology. The legal case against Blanche is also remarkably strong because the lawsuit from Katie Fang is not just a political complaint, but a formal legal claim with real evidence and real legal standing. Fang's legal team has documented specific violations of federal transparency laws, specific instances of over-redaction and withholding, and a systematic pattern of misconduct that goes far beyond mere bureaucratic incompetence. The Guardian's reporting on this lawsuit has brought these allegations to a wider audience, and the specifics are damning enough that even Republicans will have to take them seriously. This is not just a political attack, it is a legal accusation backed by evidence and documentation. The broader public reaction to this situation is likely to be intense because the Epstein case has captured the public imagination in a way that few other scandals have managed to do. The revelations about Epstein's trafficking network, the connections to powerful figures, the deaths and cover-ups and conspiracies, all of it has created a potent mix of horror and fascination that shows no signs of fading. The survivors are at the center of this public attention, and their willingness to speak out gives them a moral authority that cannot be matched by any political operative or media personality. When they say that Blanche helped cover up their abuse, people listen, and they believe. The Republican senators who have to vote on Blanche's confirmation are facing a difficult political calculus. They have to weigh their loyalty to Trump against the political cost of being associated with someone accused of helping to cover up Epstein's crimes. They have to consider whether their constituents, especially the women and independent voters who will be crucial in the next election, will forgive them for voting to confirm a man that survivors are publicly condemning. And they have to think about their own reputations and legacies, whether they want to be remembered as the people who voted to put a cover-up artist in charge of the Justice Department. The survivors are counting on the fact that politicians pay attention when victims speak, that they pay attention when women who have been hurt come forward and say this is wrong, and that they pay attention when moral authority gets mobilized and put on public display. The survivors have that moral authority in abundance because they have lived through the abuse, they have fought for justice for years, and they have stood up against cover-ups even when it was hard and dangerous. They are not political operatives or partisan opponents. They are victims of horrific crimes who are demanding that justice be served and that the truth be told. The confirmation hearings are likely to be absolutely explosive, with survivors testifying, journalists presenting evidence of the over-redaction and systematic withholding of documents, and Democrats hammering on the cover-up narrative relentlessly. The hearings will be covered extensively by the media, and the testimony will be broadcast to millions of Americans who will be watching to see whether their government is actually pursuing justice or just protecting the powerful. The survivors' stories will be told in vivid detail, and the connection between Blanche and the cover-up will be established in the public record for all to see. The The possibility that some Republicans might vote against confirmation is real because the political pressure on them is intense and the moral argument is powerful. No one wants to be seen as voting to put a cover-up artist in charge of law enforcement, especially not in a case as high-profile and emotionally charged as Epstein's sex trafficking operation. The survivors have created a political dynamic where voting to confirm Blanche is not just a vote for Trump's agenda, it is a vote that could be used against senators in their next election campaigns, a vote that could haunt them for the rest of their political careers. The media scrutiny that Blanche and his nomination will face is going to be relentless because the story has all the elements that journalists love: powerful figures, hidden documents, allegations of cover-up, and victims seeking justice. Every new revelation will be front-page news. Every new document will be analyzed and debated, and every development will be a story that dominates the news cycle. The media attention will keep the pressure on senators and will ensure that the survivors' message reaches the widest possible audience. This is not a story that can be spun away or buried. It is a story that demands attention and accountability. The survivors have also been effective in using social media and other platforms to spread their message directly to the public, bypassing traditional media filters and speaking directly to the people who will ultimately determine the political outcome of this fight. Their social media posts, their interviews, and their public statements have created a groundswell of support that is difficult for politicians to ignore. The public is on their side, and politicians know that ignoring such a vocal and morally powerful constituency is dangerous and politically costly. The ultimate outcome of this confirmation fight remains uncertain because so much depends on the decisions that individual senators make and the political pressures that they face. But the survivors have changed the dynamics of the fight dramatically because they have introduced a moral dimension that cannot be easily countered by political spin or partisan attacks. They have made this nomination about something larger than one job opening or one person. They have made it about the integrity of the American justice system and whether it can be trusted to pursue justice without fear or favor. The fight over Blanche's confirmation is going to continue, and it is going to be a close and contentious one. The survivors have shown that they are not going to be silent. They are going to continue to speak out, and they are going to continue to demand justice for what they endured. The rest of us, the voters and citizens who care about justice and the rule of law, should be paying attention to this fight because it tells us something important about who we are as a country and who we want to be. Do we want an attorney general who helped cover up Epstein's crimes? Or do we want someone who will actually pursue justice without fear or favor? The answer to that question will tell us a lot about the future of American justice. The final chapter of this story has not yet been written because the survivors are still fighting, the journalists are still investigating, and the senators are still deciding. But one thing is clear: the survivors have made their voices heard, and they have created a powerful movement that cannot be ignored. Todd Blanche's path to becoming permanent attorney general just got much harder because of what the survivors have done and said, and Trump's attempt to put someone in charge of the Justice Department who has already shown willingness to help him cover up evidence just became much more complicated and much more politically dangerous. The survivors have reminded us all that justice matters, that truth matters, and that no amount of power or wealth can ultimately bury the evidence of wrongdoing. That is their gift to the American people, and it is a gift that we should all appreciate and honor.